Hey HCDA, and welcome back to Satisfactory. And before we do anything else, I have to make a little note on the last episode where we put on these nice little truck facilities, is that I actually didn't notice there's a specific entrance for the fuel. So if you build it exactly like I did, it won't actually refuel your truck, so after a while they will run out of fuel and you will have to manually refuel them. But if you make sure that there is coal or some other fuel going into this specific fuel port that you can see with the little notice above it, then it will automatically refuel itself and you don't have to worry about that. Now you could do that on either side. I just chose to do it over here because that's where I noticed it was actually going wrong. I put an additional splitter over here and the splitter goes into the facility. It just takes 100 fuel and that's more than enough to fuel up an entire truck. And of course it doesn't actually use the entire 100 fuel anyway. So it's barely a drain on your resources, and this will just make sure that your truck keeps on trucking. Now let's go into the main part of this episode. So while Bob is being distracted by our awesome starting facility, he's just mesmerized and looking at these buildings producing all our main resources. We still have rotors, we still have those smart plates coming in, etc. We need to figure out what our next plan is, and we do have quite a few things to do actually. We can't do all of that in one episode, but we did complete tier 1, 2 and 3. The only thing that we skipped in between this episode and the other one was the jump pads. They are not that interesting to build. They are a part of any facility we can build from this point onwards. And tier 3 was the coal power that we did the trucks and the basic steel, which we now all have. We didn't actually build the versatile framework just yet. We will need to do that at some point, but for now I haven't found a use for it other than the main objective to get to the phase 2 of the space elevator. But for now, we don't necessarily need to focus on that as far as I'm aware. I might be wrong on that because we are going to focus on the advanced steel production in this episode. Now, as you can see, we unlock a ton of new different items from unlocking this, and it's a good thing that we also get the Mark II miners, because I have a feeling we're going to need a huge amount of new resources in order to make all of this, and the Mark II miners will actually produce twice as much as the Mark I miners from the same resource nodes. At least that's how I'm understanding this. So the normal extraction rate for these is 120, and for the Mark I miner it's 60. So that's basically the double output for a miner. That also applies, like I said, to all the things that we already mined. So we could actually double up on our production on all the existing factories if we would actually, well, put down the other facilities to do so, as well as put in all the belts, etc, etc. Now there's a couple of other things in this tier as well. We have improved melee combat, not that interesting, but something we will definitely want to grab, even if it's just for the inventory slots and the hand slot. The hypertubes are going to be a lot of fun, I think. It's kind of a personal transportation thing, as far as I'm understanding. It's a tube for transporting FICSIT employees. It's also apparently something that requires power, so we'll have to look into that. But the thing I am most excited about, other than the actual advanced steel production items, is the Logistics Mark III. Specifically, I really like the idea of the conveyor belts and conveyor lifts Mark III. That is going to scale up the stuff we can put on belts from 120 to 270 resources per minute, and that will actually make it a lot more convenient to scale up all those facilities along with the Mark II miners. So what I'm going to do is I am actually going to unlock both of these, and then we have to figure out what our plan is going to be. Okay, there we go. We have everything unlocked now, so we have the access to the Mark II miners and a lot of new resources. And to be honest, from this point on, it's going to be important that we kind of strategize about what we are going to produce next if we want to be somewhat efficient. Now, it's worth noting that we are going to need these frameworks as well as these automated wirings in order to progress to the next phase, and that is what we are going to need if we want to do anything else than what we currently have access to. So we are definitely going to want to focus on producing these. Now we only need 100 of these automated wirings, but we need 500 of these frameworks. So we are definitely going to want to make sure we start producing these, because I also checked out the recipe and it produces very, 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 very slowly. So that is definitely going to be a focus. The encased industrial beams are also something we want to start producing pretty quick, if only because we are going to need it for the Mark II miners as well. So that just means we don't have to handcraft these. We can actually handcraft them, so For example, for unlocking the hypertubes, we could just make 50 of those and we could be done, but I think it makes sense to start automating them. Now, in terms of the stators, I'm not sure how you pronounce it actually. Let's check out the recipe, and thank you for pointing out in the comments that there is such a thing as the codex, because I kind of forgot, and that makes it a lot easier. In order to make those, we are going to need some pipes, which we are currently producing, and we are going to need some wires. Now, actually, what I think we will probably do at this point, because we have a lot of facilities up and running now, which are all running based on Mark 1 belts, Mark 1 miners, etc., etc., is that we are kind of going to force our way through producing enough stuff so we can actually unlock the next tier. And so that means we are going to need all of this. In terms of the smart panels, I think we already have 500. At least we're going to be pretty close, to be honest. I think we might have way more than that, considering how long I have been taking. Actually, it's not even that far off. So 2, 3, 4, 500. We have a little over 500. Well, we have some in my inventory as well. So we have enough of those. So the main thing is going to be to get those frameworks and wirings, and we also need the encased beams to make sure we can actually make the Mark II miners. But other than that, we then only need the steel beams. On top of that, we do want some production of that, because that is actually what is going to allow us to use Mark III belts. And to be honest, I'm inclined to just go for the Mark III belts from this point on, because that will just make our life so much easier, and also make sure that we don't have to fiddle around with all kinds of different belts. Although, to be honest, we are still going to have to carry around at least the normal plating, because that's also used in the foundations, and that means we by default also have the materials on us for the conveyor Mark 1. Not entirely sure about that yet, but what I actually want to do at some point is kind of specialize some of these areas rather than making a little bit of everything in one place. But I think before we do that, we definitely need to go on to the next tier. So what we are going to do is we are going to repurpose our other facility. But before we can upgrade our facility, we are going to need some more power, which is probably going to be a recurring theme. But yeah, I basically just doubled up on the coal facility that we already had, so we now have a beautiful power plant on the beach. Same design actually as the previous one. It also took me a lot less time to actually build this one compared to the last one. Because of course I already knew what I was doing, so it was a lot more efficient to build. Same design, we still also only have 2 miners supplying all of this coal, because we now upgraded the miners in the back to the Mark II miners. We upgraded the belts to make sure these are upgraded versions of the belt, basically, in order to transport all that coal. And now we have no problem whatsoever to actually fuel 2 times 8, so 16 coal power plants, giving us quite a huge amount of power actually. So if we look at the power pole, we now have a production of 1200. It's still zoning in and out, but we're only consuming about 500 at the moment. So we will definitely be ramping this up. We also have a little bit of overflow because we still have the biomass burners connected to the system, although we're not actually using them. So as you can see, this is flipping around between 1125 and 1200 because of that last facility turning on and off in the back. But once again, that should sort itself out pretty soon. It's basically a matter of the water not being exactly balanced out just yet. Now, one thing to note is actually that I did bring a little truck with me in order to make this build. And the very awesome thing about this truck is that it actually allows you to bring a lot more resources with you. So you don't have to stuff everything in your own inventory, and you can basically just dump a little bit of everything in here. And then when it turns out you need just a little bit more, I don't know, rods or screws in my case, because I needed a lot more rotors than I actually had, you can just produce some on the spot without having to run all the way back to your main base. So really convenient. But now let's get on with actually upgrading our facility. Now, first thing first, since we have to upgrade the facility that we were working on last time, we are also going to need more resources. And to be honest, it's going to be quite straightforward, although it will actually be a little bit of work. We are going to upgrade the miner over here to a Mark II miner. And then we also need to upgrade some of these belts. And we are going to need a second miner here as well. So the thing I'm going for at the moment is a full Mark III belt of coal and iron to produce a total of 270 iron ore and 270 coal. And for the encased industrial beams, we are also going to need some limestone. And we actually do have a limestone deposit over here. And when we check our map, I believe actually that this one over here is actually also a limestone deposit. So I'm going to combine some belts and put down some miners, and then we should have all of that fixed. And here we have our miners set up. We have actually 2 miners over here for the iron production. That should fill up an entire belt, and it goes up until our bridge, and that is half of what we need for our production. Now the other things that we're going to need include limestone, and we have that in the back over there. We have another bridge leading from the limestone to our main facility. Now in the back there's only a Mark I miner that goes over there, so you can see it moving pretty slow. But we actually have a secondary location for limestone as well, which we can run over to. You can already see it in the back over here. This is actually a Mark II miner with a full belt of ore coming up. Now, of course, the belt is not currently moving because we are not using it yet. But all in all, it's looking pretty sleek, and we are good to go to continue on with the main build. And this main build will have to be redesigned quite a bit, because right now we have some pipes being made, we have some steel beams being made, we have the trucks coming in over there, but all in all this is not going to be anywhere close to sufficient to make what we want to make in terms of the next tier items. Now of course I actually did upgrade our coal supply in the back as well, but yeah, I think we're going to have a multi-level facility over here. We're probably going to have to take out these storage facilities, and well, we're probably going to have to redesign this entire thing. Now the foundries in the bottom are probably still going to be very useful because we already have the splitter set up there. So I think if we kind of mirror that foundry setup, we can easily double our steel production, and we should be able to take it from there. And that's 6, and we have 6 foundries up and running now, and to be honest it looks pretty good. We have all of these 6 foundries being combined into a single belt over here in the corner that we can then later on move upwards into the ceiling, so we can actually build a little lift floor hole, conveyor lift floor hole. Yeah, that's a word, I suppose. We only need a Mark I belt to actually make use of that, and well, we'll have to reposition it a little way to actually make use of this in the correct places, because this doesn't look any good at all. But yeah, you kind of get the point. Now the awesome thing about this is actually that we have a little bit of room here on the side to actually run the entire belt through, which looks pretty good if you ask me. And yeah, we have those 6 ore foundries then all being combined into one belt. And it even fits in here in such a way that there's actually nothing clipping through the belt other than apparently this power line, which I'm not entirely sure why it's over here. Oh yeah, actually I do know. It's because it's coming from the other side. So we do have to make that a little bit more neat. Okay, having arrived at the second floor, we are going to have to put in 4 constructors making steel beams. We are going to have to put in 1 constructor making pipes. And we're actually also going to need to make some concrete for the encased beams. So I think we should have room to do all of that right here. We have some access to these awesome looking floor holes now, thanks to the sink and the awesome shop. And well, I would say let's make this look good, shall we? Alright, so I think this turned out pretty well. We have the iron coming in over here that's being constructed into pipes over here. Just a single constructor making pipes, and then we have 4 of them making steel beams, and as you can see some of them are now backing up, but that shouldn't be a problem. And those are making the steel beams, and they are going on this bottom belt down here all the way through the back, and then we have on a second belt on top of that we have the limestone, or actually concrete by now. Now the limestone is actually being produced in these facilities as well, and the awesome thing is we were actually able to use one of the awesome looking wall segments to get it in, so it looks even better from the other side. Let me quickly show you. There we go. So it's actually completely aligned with the other inputs going into our facility, but this one is going up and then through the wall. And yeah, I don't know. I just like it. We definitely have some way to go to make our facility look a lot better than it currently does, but I think this is one step in the right direction. And speaking of making things look good, we have only 2 buildings left to go, at least in terms of our production, and we are going to place them on top of the facility. Now, on the next level, I think they actually look really good. Now, the challenge is going to be to actually supply them with the needed materials, and well, let me do some belt foo and show you the end result. And as you can see, we have all our goods in production right now. And let's take a little tour. So we have a door that leads to the inner workings of our facility. And yes, I gave everything a paint job. I went with my typical white and orange colors. Not entirely sure I'm 100% happy with how this looks just yet, but at least it looks better than the default. The building itself is spruced up a little bit as well with all these colors, but I also put in some ornamentations. Ornamentations? I don't know. It's room for improvement for sure, but at least it's working. Now, you might be wondering, CDA, didn't you forget something? I mean, you're making all these industrial case beams, and that's just fine, but you're also making versatile frameworks, and you didn't actually build anything for the modular frames. Well, hold on. We have this secret compartment here. Let me show you where that leads to. And welcome to the other side of our factory, where we have that secret exit over there, and that goes all the way down here, and basically that leads to down here into this truck station. And in this truck station, as you can see, we are now importing the modular frames from all the way over there in our main base, where we were already producing them. All I did there was just plant down a truck station to export all those modular frames that we have been creating over the past hours. I'm not entirely sure what you are doing. It's having a bit of issues with the ramp, it seems. But at least it's driving up and down. Is it driving in reverse now? Okay, I suppose that works. Anyway, yeah, so we are importing those modular frames. We are underproducing them a little bit in our base. We're producing 2 per second while we need 2.5. But considering we have a few hundred, if not a few thousand of them in stock, it's going to take hours upon hours for that to actually run out. And by that time, I really hope we have scaled up our facility a little bit further, because otherwise I'm not entirely sure what we're doing. Same goes for this side. I tried to make it not too blocky. I actually put in some roofs. Yes, I spent some more of our tickets. Yeah, there's definitely room for improvement in terms of my architectural skills, but I think it will work for now. Alright guys, that concludes the building of our facility over here. Next time we'll have to dive into the wirings in the next tier of that. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will catch you in the next one.